DLC. Towards the end of the year, GSC neatly teased 2 new mutants in honor of the Steam Winter Sale, and as a New Year's greeting, teased one of the future regions, the CNPP. Today we will discuss the first upcoming story expansion, the Mystery of Lymansk. The developers started work on story expansions a long time ago. Back on October 17, 2024, during the Gamescom Asia exhibition, GSC officially stated that part of the team was working on the first story DLC. But factually, work on the first 2 expansions began back in 2023, a year before the release. At the current moment, the developers have already finished the motion capture stage for new characters and are working on voiceovers for heroes and NPCs. For example, Anatoly Bogash has started working on voice acting. He is the Ukrainian voice actor who voiced the Sea Consciousness representative in Shadow of Chernobyl.
Здравствуй, Стрелок. Я вижу, у тебя ко мне много вопросов. Задавай их, а потом мы решим, что с тобой делать.
He will voice at least one character in the future DLC for Stalker 2. It is unlikely he will voice Zulu, as another voice actor is already assigned to him. I dare to assume that Anatoly will voice Chekhov or a new character, the Freedom Member Squire or the Mercenary Nord. Also, in July of last year, the GSC composer began recording ambience and soundtracks for locations and laboratories, 2 of which you might have already heard. Active rumors are spreading that the next state of play from Sony might take place as early as February 12th. And what do you think? GSC cleared space for new trailers on the Stalker 2 page on Steam. Could this hint at an imminent announcement of the Mystery of Lymansk? Last time the news about Untold Stories became a PS blog exclusive, and maybe again the news about a major update will become an exclusive for PS, but they will show us not a DLC, but an engine update, and on the game pages they will replace the old trailers with new ones with the updated version of the engine. I tried to dig up all the information regarding the expansion. We'll talk about new and returning characters of the trilogy, in detail about new mutants that are already waiting for us in the depths of the secret laboratories of Project X, and, of course, about new locations. We will analyze in detail such regions as the CNPP, Iron Forest, Limansk, and the Forgotten X-Labs that will appear together with the story DLC. Actually, stop watching Deadcaf without subscribing to YouTube and Telegram. Link in the description. The first story expansion, The Mystery of Lymansk, naming in the game files is DLC 01. Let's sort it out right away. As strange as it sounds, The Mystery of Lymansk is not a DLC. It is a full-fledged add-on to Heart of Chornobyl that won't yield to the main plot, even if technically it is considered an expansion. The expansion will be woven into the main plot. Events will occur after the signal. When Dalen launched the Monolith installation and returned the Monolithians, S.T.A.L.K.E.R was destroyed, and the D4 Treaty was torn up. The events of Untold Stories, however, can occur immediately after the prologue. We will continue playing as Skiff, not as the Mercenary Nord. Do not believe the enemies of the Monolith. The main hero will remain Skiff, just as in the next expansion, there will be new cinematics and cutscenes. It is currently unknown for what reason Skiff gets woven into the setup of the Mystery of Lymansk DLC, but if you carefully studied the world of the zone, then it will not be a secret to you that hidden in plain sight for all of us is a secret plot regarding the war of the Duty and Freedom factions. Duty members at the cement factory often mention Zulu. He is gathering a team to search for documents that state how to destroy all mutants in the zone. Zulu is not content with the situation in Duty. Duty was humbled, kicked out of the bar and Rostock, the D4 Treaty on the prohibition of faction warfare. The factions' numbers are fewer and fewer. Constant showdowns with bandits force Zulu to think that something must be done. In the build, there were several quests with Zulu present. However, subsequently, they were cut. The same fate befell the tasks of the Freedom faction. It is noteworthy that the volume of removed content connected with Freedom exceeds the number of cut duty quests by times. Obviously, the developers had weighty reasons for such a decision, and it is quite possible that we will see the reworked version of these plotlines specifically in this DLC. At the Rostock location, in one of the buildings, one can notice the inscription, "The Zone Must Die." Interestingly, the developers teased an analogous sign with this very phrase on September 19th in one of their videos. Despite the cut content, In the release version of the game inside the Freedom faction, a sabotage of the leader and the subsequent organization of a war against duty is planned. However, this line remains out of the player's field of view, at least, until the release of the expansion. They plan to return the faction war. We are talking about part of the A-Life 2.0 system, and this is already confirmed by data mining. Furthermore, in the nearest patches and DLC, one should expect further fixes and improvements to A-Life. Rumors are purposefully being spread among the fighters of both factions that Freedom patrols are allegedly attacking duty patrols, and duty fighters on Freedom patrols. However, this is a lie. Despite the fact that individual cases of deaths of fighters from both factions under strange circumstances indeed took place, such wet work was quickly hushed up. The main part of the conflict is being waged by other people's hands, the hands of bandits. Both Duty and Freedom are actively hiring bandit groups for attacks on each other's patrols, creating an illusion of conflict escalation and pushing the sides toward open confrontation. If at the beginning of the plot one kills Shah by Varen's order, a curious message from an anonymous sender can be discovered in his PDA. In it, Shah is directly asked to eliminate McLuhan, and a stash at Rostock is pointed out, which was supposed to help in the execution of this task. However, as it often happens, the son of the plot, Skiff, interferes and temporarily ruins Mavka's plans. Yes, that same Mavka from the arena. She is extremely discontent with the current situation in Freedom. The order at the market, the D4 treaty on the cessation of war between factions, and the leadership itself in the person of McLuhan. There exists a second noteworthy recording, from a certain Savka. Skiff can find it in a forgotten PDA at Rostock. The message talks about searches for a laboratory, for which McLuhan did not give official permission. With a high share of probability, Savka with the anonymous sender is Mavka. Moreover, she has already found the keycard and is getting ready for a raid with her mysterious partner, whose PDA was left at Rostock, judging by everything, out of carelessness. While it is difficult to say unequivocally who Mavka's partner will turn out to be, I have a supposition that it could be a certain squire. Freedom fighter Mavka, the referee from the arena at Rostock. GSC has already teased her twice, the first time on the Independence Day of Ukraine. GSC released a post with a greeting. There was an interesting shot with a girl whose face is being captured. Furthermore, a motion capture shoot is clearly noticeable on the actress. And it so happened that actress Wendy Roses has it stated in IMDb that she played Mavka in Stalker 2. Mavka will definitely be one of the key characters of the DLC Mystery of Lymansk, who will have her own unique appearance unlike the characters of Untold Stories. The second teaser of Mavka was at Christmas. There they also teased another key character of the DLC, Zulu. Zulu somehow gained a couple of kgs over the last 7 years in the zone, and Voronin made him a unique suit. This is another detail that directly hints at the addition of new visuals to Duty and Freedom armor. Participating in the expansion, one way or another, will be the leader of Duty, General Voronin, the former leader and founder of Duty, General Tachenko, and his group, the acting leader of Freedom McLuhan, the former leader and founder of Freedom, Chekhov, the Freedom member Squire, who I can boldly suppose will become Mavka's partner. Squire hates General Voronin with all his soul and wishes him a speedy death. Mercenaries will continue to play a key role in the universe. In the plot, the mercenary Bogey will appear, McLuhan's personal bodyguard. Acting under his command are Moran and Neptune, experienced fighters whom Bogey will send to execute special errands. The leader of a large mercenary syndicate, Nord and his mercenaries, the executors of Operation Cradle in Limansk. Actor Adam Hardy previously added participation in Stalker 2 in the role of the character Nord to his IMDb. Likely the voiceover is already ready, unfortunately without an exact date, only the year is displayed, 2025. Also, the actor did mocap for this character and participated in cutscenes under the supervision of Ilya Nashula, who directed all combat scenes and motion capture scenes. Nord is a persuasive mercenary who was previously mentioned only in the localization files of Patch 1.4, and later in Untold Stories. It was he, together with Skull, who convinced the guide Scoutmaster to return to his former craft and take up the last contract, which, as he was promised, was supposed to bring his own house on the mainland and a ticket out of the zone. However, in the finale of the deal, they betrayed Scoutmaster. The contract turned out to be a trap, and they tried to eliminate him along with the target of the contract. Note of the mercenary sniper about Operation Cradle from the localization files of patch 1.4. Attention to all participants of the operation. Penetration into the anomaly is possible only with the use of an artifact. Code name, Prism. Upon detection of the object, immediately report to Nord. Do not approach the object without an order. In the expansion, there will be about 12 main and 9 secondary tasks. Only a few tasks, 1 or 2, will take place in Limansk itself. The final task in the expansion will be at the CNPP. Among the concepts, new visuals of suits for duty and freedom were found, which might appear, but don't expect the flame suit in this DLC. Mavka has a default suit, but Zulu has one that is new for the series. At the same time, his suit does not look like the trench coat that is hiding among the concepts. His suit reminds me of something samurai-like. And behind his back is a sword or machete, possibly a long blade in a scabbard, or something like a Stalker field blade, but he has something much larger behind his back. With the release of the SDK toolkit, unused suits for female characters were dug up. Possibly we will see them in the DLC. We will analyze the plot of the expansion itself in detail and with all spoilers in another video. Approximately in the middle of the plot, we will get into Limansk. Besides Limansk, in this DLC they will give us access to X16, the lower levels of X18. Let me remind you that the X18 laboratory itself is available at the beginning of the plot and we meet S.T.A.L.K.E.R there for the first time, but there is no access to the lower levels right now. We can expect the appearance of new entrances to this laboratory, just like with X16. We will get access to the region's Iron Forest and CNPP. Possibly, but very inaccurately, to S.T.A.L.K.E.R after the signal, or under S.T.A.L.K.E.R, maybe they will finally show us the famous artifact farm. We will get into Laboratory X19 under the CNPP, the hospital, and we'll get more access in the generators region in the Dead Valley. But let's take everything in order. If you look carefully at the original map, you can notice that the game uses 3 levels of tree placement density: low, medium, and high. Low density represents solitary trees that can hardly be called a forest. However, specifically this type is the most common on the map. Medium density is encountered less often in game zones. These are typical forests that we see in the game. For example, the forest in the lesser zone, south of Zalicia. High density, on the contrary, is present only outside the territories accessible to the player. In essence, it serves as a marker that this area is no longer a game zone and the player has nothing to do there. One can say with confidence that territories with low and medium tree density were initially prepared as areas accessible to the player. Accordingly, this map shows such zones outside the accessible zone. One can notice that the sizes of some locations were initially planned to be larger than those we have now. In a number of cases, this is obvious thanks to existing detailed models, for example, the Jupiter plant. In other cases, this became known from information leaks. Another example, a chunk of the cooling towers indeed went under the knife, because they decided to shorten S.T.A.L.K.E.'s plot line. In the release version of the game, S.T.A.L.K.E., after the scene on the roof of the Red Fortress, jumps into a teleport and moves to Laboratory X7 and Skiff sets off after him. But according to the initial idea, all this did not happen so quickly, and we were setting off to the territory of the CNPP, where the teleport that led to X7 was supposed to be located. However, the territory between Cordon and Zayton, judging by design documents, was not planned as playable, but as a result, we didn't even get the Stormy Clouds anomaly visible in the distance. The Stormy Clouds anomaly would have provided constant cloudiness and cloud shadows in that place. Forest density, in turn, shows the theoretical, initially planned sizes of territories. Interestingly, in the eastern part of the zone, next to regions that players consider more finished, there are almost no such territories. On the contrary, in the western part of the zone there are many of them. There are fewer quests there, noticeably fewer anomalies, and in general, a lack of content is felt. At the same time answering a passing question, the Jupiter plant, inaccessible districts of Pripyat, the oasis from Call of Pripyat, Koshmarovka, Korogod, the Sandy Plateau, and the Cold Island. Judging by the information that exists now, these regions and locations will not participate in the Mystery of Lymansk DLC. The place of the supposed expansion of Limansk is covered with dense forest. This means that Limansk was planned as a DLC back at an early stage of development, and at the moment of the planned initial release of the game, work on this expansion had not physically begun, and only from 2023, according to my information, did work begin. For example, the regions of CNPP and Iron Forest were abandoned a long time ago. One can get into Limansk, which is inaccessible according to law at the moment in Stalker 2, with the help of Noclip. In the build, a legend circulated that Limansk is not just a city, it is a scientific grail, because for 10 years there has been no access to it. In the build, there existed only one mention of Limansk, which we do not have in the release. However, in the release version of Stalker 2, this mention was reworked into a short reference. Mentions of Limansk in the release Stalker 2. Bridge to Limansk. Approaching the bridge leading to Limansk, one can discover the corpse of a S.P.A.L.K.E member named Blitz. In his inventory is a PDA with messages from Ozerski. And on the roof of the nearest building stands a receiver, catching mysterious signals. The signal is very similar to the deadly signal that S.T.A.L.K's client wanted to use in Untold Stories. Quest Act of Mercy. To the right of the bridge to Limansk there will be a tunnel. Inside the tunnel, according to the Quest Act of Mercy, there will be a wounded former monolithian and member of that very research group Spark from Call of Pripyat, Spirit, who miraculously did not fall under the repeated action of the monolith installation. Spirit will tell that he had a goal to get into Limansk, but he checked all previously known passages and they are inaccessible. At the exit from the tunnel, on the left, one can notice a truck, and in the body a backpack with a note from a stalker who wants to get into Limansk by climbing onto the bridge. It's unlikely he would have succeeded, although who knows. So what do we have? All passages to Limansk are closed and strange signals emanate from there. Why? What is wrong with Limansk? In 2024, one of the community managers gave a conclusion to Forrester's words about Limansk. Limansk in itself is a spatial arch-anomaly. Forrester about Limansk. Forrester in Clear Sky tells that before the accident at the CNPP, the city was classified, representing a small science city that grew around the Radio Wave Research Institute. What exactly they were doing in this institution is unknown. However, the presence of a large antenna near the institute, as well as words about certain oddities of the residents of this place, leads to the thought that Limansk was a platform for experiments on mental control and zombification of the population, which, according to Forrester's words, idolized the Soviet power and looked askance unpleasantly at all non-urban people. Residents of the surrounding settlements, in turn, complained about the oppressive atmosphere of the streets of Limansk and severe headaches, allegedly caused by this antenna, and tried to bypass this place. What happened to the city after the first accident is unknown. According to Forrester's words, the government didn't even conduct an evacuation of the population, but whether this is so, no one knows for sure. One way or another, soon the city emptied, becoming only a location known to few. Who is Forrester? Character biography and where to find his grave in Stalker 2. The old Forrester. The only surviving local resident who refused to evacuate back during the first accident at the CNPP in 1986. He possesses the ability to sense anomalies without electronic devices. He dwells in the structure of an abandoned mine on the outskirts of the Red Forest. Forrester grew up in one of the villages in the vicinity of Limansk. Sometimes he saw the residents of this city. He became a forester of the Limansk Reserve, guarding the forest from poachers. After the catastrophe at the CNPP, they wanted to evacuate Forrester, but he refused due to his attachment to his native places. After the second explosion at the station, he discovered in himself the ability to scent and bypass anomalies. Independently, with the help of a found compass artifact, he was able to get out of a spatial bubble. He is also a technician, but he does not upgrade, only repairs equipment. Forrester in Stalker 2. In the mine headframe in the Red Forest, we were supposed to meet the universally beloved Forrester, who would ask for help in the fight against poachers. Moreover, one could ask him about mutants, but in the build, the dialogue is unfinished. Going through Forrester's quest in the build, during the course of which we are asked to deal with poachers, one can learn interesting information. Skiff. Where do deer live around here? Forester. There is no concrete place, and they haven't walked in herds for a long time. If you see from afar a group of grazing antlered ones, it's a trap. Only one is real, the rest are ghosts. They have such a peculiarity. It turns out that the pseudo-deer could have an ability similar to the pseudo-dog and a special specimen of the buy-in cat with a collar in the game. A buy-in cat with a collar is encountered, the main difference of which from a regular buy-in is the ability to create its own doubles. Another dialogue between Skiff and Forester. Skiff. How is life here in the forest, old man? Forester. I'm in no hurry with a prayer. It is good in the forest. See how big it has grown over there, only I have become small for it. The zone doesn't give its gifts for nothing. Forester talked about the gifts of the zone only after Skiff brings him a can of condensed milk. Forester. It happened so that the zone planted a great power in me. I sent anomalies, I know how to pass. Only it's getting harder and harder to walk. All my life I waited for the zone to take its payment, but I turned out to be unprepared anyway. Stalkers envied me, the fools. They came for advice, to show some path, to drag out a rare artifact. But now, when life is leaving me, everyone has forgotten about me. Except the medics. As soon as I get ready for the forest, they immediately put me in a bunk. The forest has become almost ownerless. I see how bad it feels sometimes, but I can't do anything. Oh, yummy. Just, don't tell the doctor. I'm not allowed sweets, and it's sickening to look at pills with needles. By the way, here, take this. It will be more useful to you. At the end of the dialogue, Forester gave us one army medkit. The myth of Forester's grave. Sometime after the game's release, near Forester's mine, one new grave was found, which theoretically could belong to the old inhabitant of the zone. However, in patch 1.2, this grave was removed. And it turned out that the grave appears only after the quest arc times. Off-screen, after the quest, Archip buried the Stalker Grey. The hypothesis with Forester was good, but the myth was finally destroyed. It is unknown if Forester will appear with expansions, but according to canon he did not die. In the build he is alive and well, simply Grigorovich scissors spare no one. Mentions of Limansk in the build. Not far from the bridge leading to the city, one can meet a scientist conducting very unusual observations. For one or several cans of food, he willingly shares his data. According to his words, from the direction of Limansk, strange signals are recorded from time to time, short radio transmissions, similar to a whisper breaking through interference. The scientist also notes that no one has been in Limansk for about 10 years, and it is not known for certain what is happening there now. At this, the dialogue cuts off. However, leaving, Skiff hears those very radio interferences with someone's barely distinguishable whisper. This is the only mention of Limansk preserved in the build. Let me remind you that Limansk was previously mentioned in Call of Pripyat, in the good ending connected with Lieutenant Sokolov. His helicopter was shot down by mercenaries specifically over Limansk. 2 weeks later, he, having survived by nothing short of a miracle, was picked up by a patrol near the cordon. Soon Sokolov left the ranks of the Air Force and transferred to civil aviation, but how he managed to get out of the city is naturally unknown. One can assume that after the second greater mission at the CNPP in the finale of Clear Sky, Limansk became inaccessible again. However, after S.T.A.L.K.E.R disabled the brain scorcher and destroyed the sea consciousness, the city turned out to be open again, at least, until the third catastrophe. In this period, Limansk remained accessible, and mercenaries continued the struggle for control over the city. Practically nothing is known about the concrete realization of Limansk at the moment. It is not excluded that the developers might take a rather bold step to make the city itself compact in size, but at the same time dynamically reconstructible. Such an approach would allow adding variability and diversity to the gameplay, even with a limited scale of the location. There exists a probability that Laboratory X13 will be moved under the Radio Wave Research Institute. This looks logical, considering that in the design documents of Clear Sky, the Dead City was repeatedly mentioned under the name Limansk 13. Previously, Laboratory X13 was planned under the Red Forest, under the quarry. However, there are no details about this laboratory, neither in the build nor in the design documents, which makes this concept effectively abandoned. The abandoned hospital is a sublocation of Limansk in Clear Sky, a sort of bypass road that allows one to bypass the Scorcher without consequences and get to the CNPP through the Pripyat catacombs. The Pripyat catacombs are mentioned only in Clear Sky and only verbally. In Stalker 2, this logic breaks, and Limansk with a hospital are already located beyond the Brain Scorcher, so getting to the CNPP via a bypass would not have worked. There are no mentions of the hospital in the localization files of patch 1.4 and the build. I am not sure if it will appear, but it would be strange not to add a whole chunk of the location of a future region to the game. After the events of the DLC, the hospital could become an excellent opportunity to get into Pripyat bypassing the frontier. In the New Year's greeting, GSC teased the CNPP. It turned out to be a very competent teaser. Here is a comparison of the CNPP stand in the game and the teaser. One can notice a tree in the trailer that comes from Shadow of Chernobyl. And the video itself seems to refer us to the finale of Shadow of Chernobyl, Operation Monolith. There is a helicopter burning out on the roof of the CNPP sarcophagus. A zombified person walking in the distance is visible, corpses of monolithians. And in the background, the CNPP ambient plays, work on which began in July of this year. One can expect the appearance of cut tree assets and finally full-fledged fog. In the new art book, there is a whole page dedicated to various weather cycles. How many of all these variants made it into the game? 9 to 10? And only now will fog become available. There should have been far more variations of the emission too, if one pays attention to the recently posted concepts on ArtStation by one of the developers. I don't know if you waited for the return of burnt fuzz in Stalker 2. As for us, unequivocally yes. One of the most atmospheric anomalies, whose roots grow from the Strugatsky brothers' roadside picnic. Another anomaly, or rather an arch-anomaly, might return together with the CNPP region in the vicinity of the Dead Valley. An anomaly was supposed to be located at the site of the destroyed generators on the CNPP. As we know, in the game's lore from now on there are two types of generators. Some at the CNPP, destroyed, apparently after the events of Shadow of Chernobyl, and others, key ones, under which X7 is located. The anomaly arose as a consequence of the radiation of the old generators at the CNPP. It represents a symbiotic array of branches of wood species, clearly distinguishable from afar by the unusual shape of curved branches that resemble the legs of a spider, in themselves harmless, unlike the accumulating dangerous chemical substances underneath them and the contaminated air. The Arch-anomaly feeds from a radioactive accumulation of processed fuel, near the remains of the former generators. An older version of the oak pine Arch-anomaly from Call of Pripyat. They even managed to proceed to the realization of this idea, but in the end, the anomaly was cancelled, and the passage to the CNPP was closed from all sides. From the side of the Dead Valley, besides radiation, the path is blocked by a river. Do you think this was a good idea, or did it make no sense, since the anomaly essentially simply copied the universally known oak pine from Call of Pripyat? Remnants of clear sky at the CNPP. Kalancha, Suslov, Cold, and Nimble did not head together with Lebedev to the center of the zone, remaining in the swamps, and did not participate in the assault on the CNPP, during which an emission occurred that ruined the entire faction. Where Kalancha, Cold, and Suslov went is currently unknown, possibly to the remnants of MDST. I think they will tell us about this in more detail in the Cold Island DLC. Kalancha is a former employee of the X Laboratories, later, one of the founders and the staff scientist of the Clear Sky faction. He continued the research of the zone under the leadership of MDST, together with other key members of Clear Sky, Lebedev and Suslov. Initially, he was part of the research group of secret laboratories on the territory of the Chornobyl exclusion zone, including X8, which was the central laboratory, and X7, which dealt with the problem of studying the influence of the noosphere. They ceased to be part of the group after the second catastrophe, the transfer of control over the X network to the leaders of MDST. One of the ideas for the early cancelled plot of Stalker 2, 2010, was the revelation of the further history of the Clear Sky faction through a secondary quest. It was assumed that a small number of faction members, including Professor Kalancha, did not go to the assault on the CNPP, but remained in the swamps and became the only representatives of the faction. The surviving members of the faction asked the main hero to find out the details of what exactly happened to their comrades at the walls of the sarcophagus. In the course of completing this task, the player could stumble upon zombified Clear Sky members, including the leader of the faction, Lebedev. GSC used developments from 2010 and 2011 all the time, so it is worth counting on the remnants of the faction at the walls of the sarcophagus. How X-19 under the CNPP is confused with X-7 under the generators, or, more correctly said, with one of the levels in the X-7 laboratory complex. What if I tell you that in the first trailer of Stalker 2, they showed us not laboratory X-19, but the lowest of the X-7 levels, the PSY blockade? Behind this level is only one thing, the proto-anomaly heart of Chornobyl, the meaning of the whole plot and a huge part of what we lost. The Heart of Chornobyl project, the developers initially came up with all the answers to our questions, where artifacts and anomalies come from in the zone, what emissions are and why they happen after all, and the father of all anomalies and artifacts is to blame for everything. The Heart of Chornobyl project created the first anomalies and artifacts from itself. The Heart of Chornobyl proto-anomaly spawned the artifact of the same name. The Heart of Chornobyl, it was the first and most perfect artifact, from which everything originated. The monolith control bunker, the supervisory board looted the treasury under the sarcophagus with the hands of the ward and Sirkar, but their hands could not reach something else, the embryonarium, which is closed to all wishing to get there, and few people remain alive who know about it. The description of the CNPP literally hints to us about it. After the accident of 1986, the Chornobyl NPP turned out to be in the center of attention of the whole world, and the second catastrophe made it the unreachable center of the zone. Rumors circulate that S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the legend of the zone, once managed to visit the station. However, what is happening inside the CNPP now, even he does not know. The Arch is already finished, and we analyzed in the past video that the Untold Stories DLC leads up to the Mysteries of Lymansk, the Pseudo-Brain, Laboratory X-16, X-19, and Chekhov. Details of secondary quests in the DLC are, unfortunately, unknown. I can only assume that most likely one large secondary quest will be connected with the Iron Forest region, the second with the mercenary bogey in X-18, and the third from Zulu connected with X-16. Laboratory X-16. At a moment, Laboratory X-16 and the repeated disabling of its installation in one of the secondary tasks were planned, but this idea was abandoned. X-16 itself will still appear in the Mystery of Lymansk DLC most likely as a secondary task under Yantar. Right now, instead of a laboratory, a placeholder hangs there in the form of red lights. Let's not forget about Sakharov's documents and audio from X-16, which were discovered among the UI/UX assets and in localization files. Also, throughout the year in the new art book, the brain in a vat or pseudo-brain was teased several times already, and generally indicated that the pseudo-brain managed to visit X-18. X-16 in the build. In the build, X-16 is quite well developed. There is an entrance, a descent to the lower floors of the laboratory, a brain in a vat, and the room where S.T.A.L.K.E.R disabled the PSY installation. The path to the vat differs strongly from the path in Shadow of Chernobyl. Many passages are blocked and have bypass routes. The entrance and exit to X-16 differs from what we are used to seeing in Shadow of Chernobyl and modifications. The fault at Yantar was initially different. I think many noticed the huge crack in the ground near the Yantar plant filled with gas. But initially, this was a tectonic fault, which served as a secret exit and entrance to Laboratory X-16. It had stone precipices and stone ledges for the player's movement. Since X-16 is currently absent, there is no connection to it either, but on release, there are caves leading to the Rossika equipment graveyard not far from Yantar. Also in the release version, there was no log, but already in patch 1.4 or 1.5, I don't remember exactly, they added it. So maybe in the DLC these caves will be expanded to an entrance or exit from X-16. And how can one not recall patch 1.6 and the Arch, thanks to which tunnels were added, through which we got out of X-16 in Shadow of Chernobyl. DLC Mystery of Yantar. The DLC about Yantar most likely quickly grew into a secondary task, which McLuhan was supposed to give out. S.T.A.L.K.E.R did not completely disable the installation at Yantar, and the brain in the vat began to be active, sending crowds of zombified towards Rostock. We had to load a neurotoxin into the vat and kill the mind, which even talked. Look at the gif of how the neurotoxin gets into the pseudo-brain. But, besides this, there was also a peaceful variant of completion. The thing is that the cognitive functions of the brain decreased slightly, and there was another compound that helped the creature. As a reward, we received a special artifact. X-18. Vats with mutant embryos from X-18 received lore conceptualization a long time ago. Now it will be confirmed that the goal of the laboratory is directly the cultivation of mutants from embryos and the breeding of new species. For example, in X-18 they managed to breed a new type of mutant, the poltergeist, and even different types. We are used to considering the kinetic one classic, but besides it, they managed to breed electric, chemical, and fire poltergeists. And it all started with the cultivation of the pseudo-brain and experiments on Tushkins. Rostock, Wild Territory. Zayton, Skadovsk. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Judging by coordinates from game files, the DLC will begin in the Wild Territory in the Rostock region. Also, we will return to Zayton and look into Skadovsk, and won't forget to look in the direction of S.T.A.L.K.E.R during the course of events, specifically unknown, maybe into X11, maybe to the artifact farm or the Hydrodynamics laboratory, which is located in the Zayton region, near S.T.A.L.K.E.R. The experimental boat of S.T.A.L.K.E.R is located there. It is unlikely that we will get into Limansk specifically with its help, but maybe to the Cold Island, but that's in the next expansion. Why will we penetrate into Laboratory X11? Possibly for Dalen's left-behind detector, the Eye, which will somehow help us in the search for a special artifact to penetrate into Limansk, or we will scour the laboratory in search of documents. It is impossible to say for sure right now. Detector Eye, or almost officially Pupil. In the new version of the art book, besides a more extensive description of anomalies and a change in the description of the eye detector, they changed the name of the detector in Ukrainian localization. They changed the name from Oko, Eye, to Zenitsa, Pupil. While it is difficult to say if Zenitsa will take root, because in the Ukrainian variant owners of art books found at least 2 more errors with translation. And it's hard to call it an error, rather the developers haven't decided yet, because besides Zenitsa or Oko, there is a mention of the name, Polyad, Gaze. Description of the eye detector right now. The most modern artifact detector, equipped with a radar and visualizer of anomalous formations. The high price is more than justified by exceptional efficiency. Description in the past art book. A powerful ultramodern detector developed at S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Dr. Dalen is the only one who understands the principles of its operation, and he does not want to disclose this information to outsiders. In the game files, design docs, and build, one can discover the model of the eye detector. In the game, one can spawn the detector, but it cannot be taken in hand and does not have an icon in the inventory. One can find it on one of the shelves behind the back of the trader hamster in Zalicia. The main ability of this detector is the possibility to visualize an anomaly. Most likely GSC will adapt this, but for now, these are only guesses. Possibly, they will make this visualization for passing some spatial arch-anomalies in the DLC. For example, one needs to solve a puzzle inside an anomaly to get a special artifact. Arch-anomalies in which there will be a puzzle, similar to the Labyrinth House. By the way, the detector is very similar to the tactical insertion device from Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And I don't let you forget that on the icon of the maximum, 5th level, the eye detector is depicted in an other working state. Hydrodynamics Laboratory. It is interesting that in one of the buildings, not far from the Hydrodynamics Laboratory, a model of the Caribbean experiment was supposed to be located. We were supposed to discover it in the Pump and Erosion Laboratory. Then they wanted to place a quest of the Cut Flame faction there, with that very talking controller from Call of Pripyat. In the release, we come there for the collar of a unique controller. Thus we come out on interesting details. The leader of the Flame faction, Dervish, would have asked us to study the unique talking controller, and not kill it, as in the release. And it turns out that in the release there are no mentions that this is that very talking controller from the caves under the burnt farmstead from Call of Pripyat. So yes, the controller with the collar is that very get out of here, man. Another missed interesting detail of fan service for fans of the trilogy. Region Iron Forest. Full of anomalies, destroyed power lines, and wires through which current from an unclear source still runs, the Iron Forest was once a relatively popular place. However, after one of the emissions, it became impossible to get into its territory. Maybe the zone is preparing something special for us, or maybe it simply lures overly curious stalkers to certain death. Whatever it may be, one thing is clear for sure. There is no entry there now. Description of the Iron Forest from the new art book. Distorted, twisted power lines crackle with energy discharges, while fields of electrical anomalies and mutants adapted to this harsh environment fill the region. Even communication here defies logical explanation. Amidst the mangled transmission towers, you might catch signals sent months or even years ago. The art team proposed creating anomalies out of electrical wires that coil around the player like magnetic snakes, squeezing them and biting with electric shocks. In some cases, mirages formed from dancing sculptures also support the serpentine theme. The art team wanted to create a unique biome based on electrical phenomena, so they created multiple environment variations with an electrical theme. For example, an electric fog that moves across the location and charges from local power lines. From new details about the region, we learned that one can catch signals sent months or even years ago. A certain electric fog will drift throughout the region, charging from the local power lines. Perhaps this fog will become an annoying thorn in the side, hindering the peaceful exploration of the new location. And these are not all the dangers. The developers directly hint at the appearance of new mutants adapted to the electrical biome, unique electrochimeras and even beavers, or maybe even unique poltergeists and bloodsuckers. Map of the Iron Forest from design documents. Some noteworthy places can be noticed. The Iron Forest Anomaly, Oru 330 kV, and SCAT-2, which in Call of Pripyat was located literally together with the Iron Forest Anomaly. It was specifically there that Detector once found a map of the area to save on the passage to Yanov Station. Testing Workshop and Substation Workshops from Call of Pripyat. Anomaly Oru 750 kV, in which they plan to place an artifact giving infinite ammo to the Gauss rifle. IPSF Base. Oru Control Node. Flooded premises connected with the cut quest Thunder and Lightning. Bunker in the Red Forest, which is already in the game and in which there is exactly something similar to a monorail, mentioned in files connected with the DLC. Mention of the Iron Forest in Stalker 2. In the localization files of Stalker 2, after the release of patch 1.4, a mention of the location Iron Forest was discovered in a correspondence of friends. Correspondence of a friend with Treshkotka. Friend. I found a guide who can lead us to the Iron Forest. Treshkotka. No way, are you sure? You can only get there through IPSF. Is the dude definitely not scamming us? Friend. Sure. He charges expensively, but it's worth it. They say that in the forest there are artifacts like blind dogs at a meatpacking plant. Friend. In short, we meet tomorrow at the abandoned duty checkpoint at the cement factory. We'll move out from there. Note from the entrance to the Iron Forest. Damn this Treshkotka. I knew that in the zone no one is your brother. Paid so much dough to the guide so that he would lead us to the Iron Forest. My dough. And this lover of chirping in the bar only listened about the absence of connection, and immediately took to his heels, a step away from the tunnel. Only now on the spoil tip he is pouring booze down his throat, the scumbag. Well, nothing, I'll speak out myself. And then I'll find this rogue and pull his ears. PDA of the deceased friend. The PDA of Treshkotka's friend, found on his own corpse somewhere in the underground at the entrance to the Iron Forest. In the build, unlike the release variant, the location is quite well filled. According to my rumors, the developers abandoned this region in the main game a long time ago and left it for the DLC. While it is not known exactly what role the Iron Forest will play, possibly here we will have to look for the Prism artifact for penetration into Limansk, or the location will acquire a couple of juicy side quests, and in the plot it will become purely transitional, where we activate the monorail and set off to X-19 under the CNPP, because if you haven't forgotten, under the Iron Forest is the testing workshop and the filling of its underground part in Call of Pripyat was not revealed, and a monorail can quite possibly hide there. Previously, a monorail was also planned for Laboratory X-12 under the Red Fortress, but, unfortunately, there is not a single clue yet that led to the return of this laboratory to the zone, only that it was undercut and one can take a walk in it, but about that a bit later. Quest Thunder and Lightning. The side task itself is very raw and doesn't even work in the build, but from its description, it follows that a certain hunter Grom, Thunder, asks Skiff to help in the liquidation of a unique pseudo-giant. The thing is that no weapon worked on the mutant, and we had to descend into underground tunnels under the iron forest and activate some valves to gather water, in order to eventually inflict damage with a powerful electric discharge. Where the hunter was located and what the reward should have been remains a mystery. But one can already assume that the unique pseudo-giant will not appear and the quest will be significantly reworked, after which it will be necessary to eliminate an electro-chimera. It will act as a mini-boss. Infinite ammo for the Gauss rifle. GSC had an idea that the Gauss rifle could be improved in the iron forest with the help of an artifact. Anomaly Oru 750 kV, a small substation with generators and electric towers. Constant discharges of electricity strike objects with a high concentration of metal. At a level of 5 to 10 meters from the ground, a ball lightning hovered, which strikes metal objects around itself. Some objects are connected to the ball lightning by electric arcs. Many electro-anomalies are located throughout the location. The player will need to put all weapons and ammo in a stash nearby to pass into the anomaly. In some places, to pass through an area with chaotic discharges, the player needs to throw a bolt so that all lightning bolts start hitting the bolt, and the player can pass. In this anomaly resides an artifact that can be placed in the Gauss rifle for infinite ammo, but increasing weapon wear per shot. X-12. Under the cooling towers is the undercut laboratory X-12. Unfortunately, it is unlikely that we will pump water out of it in this DLC. This laboratory is marked on the build map. Only a room remains of it, which is well detailed. It is possible to walk around it. In design documents, it is stated that equipment for studying spatial bubbles was located in X-12. In the build, there is somewhat more filling than in the release. Certain installations are present, which is not observed in the release. Official concept arts of X-12 under the cooling towers near the Red Fortress. On one of the concepts, one can notice a new type of anomaly, a climatic anomaly inside a large chamber, similar to those that we saw in the scientist's bunker at Yanov. Possibly, experiments on artifacts are conducted in these chambers or they feed the complex with artifacts. Concept arts of Laboratory X-12 from design documents. The direction of research in X-12 is known, the study of spatial bubbles. In the build, the laboratory is mentioned only in the last of several cut quests of the Duty faction. It is said that certain anomalous subjects, super mutants, were sent there for conducting experiments. However, detailed specifics are not provided. We would have learned that the laboratory continues to function and Ward occupied it and they began a series of cruel experiments on mutants. If judging by the future, probable execution of the interiors of the Red Fortress and X-12, then a monorail was supposed to be or will be located in X-12, and the monorail will play an important role in the expansion. Moreover, in the new art book, a hint appears from GSC themselves that not all secrets of the Red Fortress have been solved. Named the Red Fortress because of the rust-covered walls, the 5th power unit of the Chornobyl NPP has long served as a formidable citadel of the monolith. Scientists have so far failed to uncover all the secrets of the PSY technologies hidden inside, and only a few have managed to avoid the dangers that still lurk in its depths. An image was shown featuring a set of monolith PSI devices, an installation called Scala. Scala is part of the X network, also designated as the 5th block. Through it, Dalen, located under S.T.A.L.K.E.R in X11, intended to connect to the X7. New mutants. What kind of peculiar, not entirely new mutant for the Stalker series, but still living in its own way will be met for the first time, the PSY embryo. Previously, we could notice similar mutants on the lower levels of Laboratory X18 in Shadow of Chernobyl. Also in Stalker 2 in X3, one of the oldest laboratories of Project X, we were supposed to meet it alive for the first time. In X3, they investigated the influence of PSY emission on living organisms. Experiments and trials on cultivating PSY embryos were conducted there, artificially cultivated embryos based on the genetic material of agricultural animals. The scientific group achieved significant successes. They managed to grow several PSY embryos capable of accumulating, processing, controlling, and projecting PSY energy. Subsequently, thanks to the developments of X3, mutants with PSY abilities were created in Laboratory X18 and the undergrounds of the Agriprom Research Institute. The Pseudodog, Burra, Poltergeist, and Controller. As it turned out, Without the participation of scientists, on their own, for example into a burrow, these blanks could not turn. In the early plot for Stalker 2, 2024, we were supposed to visit X3 and stumble upon a unique mutant. The surviving PSY embryo was supposed to float in the darkness among semi-broken vats for creating mutants. In the end, on release, one cannot meet this mutant, but Stalker Red mentions him, that very Stalker who found S.T.A.L.K.E.R near the death truck. The mention can be found in Wolf's old PDA in the rookie village at the cordon.
Did you see those containers, Wolf? What the fuck was in there? Embryos? What are they growing in those things? If you ask me, those things they've been growing should definitely stay in the catacombs. That's why I blew up the entrance. Wouldn't want to come to the cordon one day and find you all ripped to shreds now, would I?
All that is known about the mutant's abilities is that it could accumulate, process, control, and project PSY energy, which can allow it to create spatial anomalies, practically harmlessly control the will of other entities, influence behavior, change the personality and character of the poor fellows who fell under its control. The embryo can possess far greater power in evil hands, several times exceeding the power of even several pseudo-brains from X16. The PSY embryo will become the main object around which the first expansion will revolve, or even an absolute weapon, because of which factions will begin a confrontation for control over the embryo's power. Possibly, we will meet it not only in the Mystery of Lymansk DLC under the CNPP and in Limansk, on the upper floors of the Radio Wave Research Institute, but also in the Cold Island DLC, on the ship Arch-Tchaikovsky, about which we will talk in the next videos. Cadaver. The second mutant that will likely appear is the cadaver. This is the result of experiments aimed at achieving a single goal, the creation of the ideal soldier. The scientists standing behind Project X clearly had a hand in the creation of these monsters. Despite the fact that they appeared in the zone's bestiary relatively recently, they have already become the subject of many scary stories told at Stalker bonfires. Until the last moment, I hope to meet it in the game, since before release it was shown in the artbook. Interesting fact, in Shadow of Chernobyl, Professor Krugloff calls the zombified around the bunker of scientists at Yantar cadavers. The cadavers have started stirring again. The cadaver was designated as a super soldier. It turns out according to leak maps we were supposed to meet this opponent in X18, X11, X8, X16, and X10. Cadaver is a term with several meanings, the most common of which is a corpse used for scientific and medical purposes. Theoretically, one can assume that the C Consciousness or already MDST conducted experiments on reviving corpses, perfecting civilian zombies, and turning them into perfect super soldiers. The cadaver might turn out to be a quite strong opponent with bulletproof protection, a PSY helmet, like the Granite Fighters or S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Cadavers will definitely have a weak spot in the area of implants implanted in them. What these implants and muzzle do is unknown, but it looks like they are needed to keep the mutant in a working condition, prevent tissue decay and enhance certain abilities, maybe suppress the mutant's will, control its aggression. In essence, these implants and muzzle are a remote leash. They tried to create a similar technology in Project Leash in X5 under the Agriprom Research Institute, but after the second catastrophe, the laboratory was reassigned to Project Controller, and most likely the experimental prototypes were taken by MDST and research was continued in another of the X laboratories. In Clear Sky, after the Duty operation, Ash, where Duty overdid it with explosives, as a result of which the surface part of the Agriprom Research Institute was destroyed, mutants poured onto the surface from the laboratory. In Stalker 2 there is an interesting side quest, in the name of science, connected with these collars, and the achievement for completing this side quest directly hints that with Project Leash, maybe everything is not over yet. Why did I recall Project Leash at all? If one delves into the essence of the project itself, it was founded because of test subject mutants escaping from X18 in their time, but that's not all. The main goal was not the control of all escaped mutants and tracking them, but only especially dangerous ones, which were practically invulnerable to the effects of item number 62, the Gauss rifle. And if you put 2 and 2 together, then the talk was definitely not about some Tushkanos, but about super mutants, such as the cadaver. And what would you think? Another hidden teaser of 2 new mutants was found in a GSC post dedicated to the Steam Winter Sale. In it, they teased the PSY embryo and the cadaver. Here is the original Steam poster about the Winter Sale for comparison. And strangely enough, now I can assume that previously the cadaver was actually teased together with Zulu and Mavka, or I could be mistaken and this is yet another new mutant. The civilian zombie, I very much doubt that sometime this mutant will be added officially, but chances are never zero. During the development of Stalker 2, the developers used models of mutants cut from Shadow of Chernobyl. Thus, in a draft cutscene with S.T.A.L.K.E.R at the sawmill, one can notice zombie civilians. Such a cutscene could be contemplated in the build. In the release version, however, there are ordinary zombie stalkers, among whom is Kosoi, a stalker who appropriated ward scanners in the lesser zone and caused problems for S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Myth. Joke about the cadaver. Meta-realist, or already the bald guy from KTC, throughout the year has been rubbing in to people some joke about the cadaver, which could allegedly be heard only on release. The time has come to dispel this myth. In the game files, there is not a single mention of the cadaver, and especially of a joke about the cadaver. This is outright bullshit. To check this, it suffices to write the name of the mutant in the release localization files and find exactly 0 mentions. Beavers. The third mutant, which could, but has little chance to appear, the Beaver. Last year on his Instagram, the lead concept artist of GSC, Tony Zanisham, told that the Beaver was planned back in the distant 2018, but due to the fact that there are already too many rodents in the game, the idea was subsequently abandoned. Now for some reason the entry with the concept is deleted, which can mean anything. Write your guesses in the comments. It is always interesting for me to read your opinion. Description of the Beaver. A mutant suffering from the environment. Bald from radiation and crazed, the Beaver collected sharp and radioactive junk to build itself a lair. That is why its muzzle looked disfigured in such a way. In terms of gameplay, it could collect weapons as a resource, acting in the role of a kind of scavenger in the zone. It would attack the player if he tried to take rare junk from its lair. As for me, it would be much more interesting to add a mechanic with these beavers near such anomalies as oak pine and swampy terrains, where they could unexpectedly attack the player from the water. The Iron Forest region would be a fitting place for such mutants. Also, beavers were supposed to be connected with the cut Arch-anomaly Vibra in Zayton. From Vibra, beavers climbed out en masse after every passage of a train along the underground branch. One had to blow up previously planted dynamite sticks to collapse the beaver penetration paths to the surface. Nearby, they planned to add a platform that beavers could not climb onto. Bandits were located there, who planted the dynamite sticks but did not manage to activate them before the appearance of the wave of mutants. Concept study of beavers. Oh, Curver, what are they doing with the beaver? Whether even more mutants will appear remains a mystery, because adding a couple of mutants, this will not save the state of the game, which currently stands on very thin ice. If you disagree with me, showing you this is enough. Summary. Summing up this whole story, it is no longer if, but when. Untold Stories is not just a content patch, but a direct story lead-up to the first big DLC. The Arge, PSY Signals, X-19, Nord, Chekhov, PSY Embryos, all these are parts of one puzzle that is being neatly assembled right before our eyes. And the further it goes, the more obvious it is that GSC are preparing not a small addition, but a serious story expansion woven into the main canon of the zone. It turns out there will be several global branches that can influence the zone, and it remains for us to wait for the release of the DLC in the spring of this year, and a teaser very soon.